Today we're out here in the pasture with our sheep, and I'm going to give you a complete guide to setting up and operating Premier One electric netting. Now, whether you've got poultry netting or you've got sheep netting, it doesn't matter. All of the same things are going to apply in terms of operating the fencing and making sure it keeps your animals in and predators out. I'm going to give you a lot of tips on selecting the right fence and energizers and all the tools that you need for a complete setup, so make sure you stick around to the end. Let's jump into it. So first, let's talk about the items that you actually need. Now, in front of me here, I've got 2 rolls of sheep netting or sheep fencing, and these are 100-foot links, and they have a single spike on the end. Now, when you're purchasing the rolls of fence, you have multiple options when it comes to the spikes. Some fencing rolls come with a step-in double spike, so it's 2 thinner spikes, and some rolls come with a single spike. Sometimes those are actually drivable spikes where you can drive the spike in the ground with a rubber mallet, and some of them you're just gonna have to press in the ground. I really don't like the double spiked fencing because we have a lot of rocks here on our property, and getting those into the ground just doesn't work. They bend and it's just a pain in the butt. So all of our rolls of fencing that we have are single drivable spikes. Now, when I'm buying the electric rolls of fencing, I don't want that roll of fence to be anywhere over 100 foot in length. If you get the longer rolls of fence, it can just be really cumbersome when you're trying to roll it up, when you're trying to move it around. It can get pretty heavy. And so I prefer 100 foot or less. If you can get 50-foot rolls, that's even better, but the price does go up a little bit. So just to clarify today, I'm gonna put links down in the description of this video with all of the fencing that we use, both for our chickens and for our sheep, as well as the energizers and all the other things that I'm going to talk about today. Now, once you've got your rolls of fence, you're going to need an energizer. This is an area you do not want to skimp on. You want a high quality, powerful energizer. I've got 2 of them here. One of them is the ELECTROSTOP 100, and the other one is the ELECTROSTOP 80, I believe. Yes. So this one I use a lot for our sheep fencing as well as for our chicken fencing. The other items you're going to need, I prefer 2 3-foot ground rods. These are T ground rods. I like this because you can pull them out of the ground really easily when you're moving your fencing. And the other thing you're going to need is this is just a connector that connects the 2 ground rods. And I'll explain a little bit more of how you use this here in a minute. The other thing you're going to need is a digital fence tester. And I'll show you how to use this as well here shortly once we get the fence set up. And the last thing you're going to need is some type of sledgehammer, or you don't have to get one this big, but this is what you're going to use to drive your ground rods into the ground. You will also need a rubber mallet if you're going to be using the drivable single spike posts, and we use those a lot for our chicken fencing. So now let's talk about getting your rolls of fencing ready to go and ready to lay out. Now, I've got this roll of fence opened up. When you get them in a box, they're going to be completely rolled up and tied with black ropes. You're going to keep those black ropes because that's how you're going to connect each fence together, each roll of fence together. So I like to lay them out on the ground just like you see here, and this is the way I'm going to carry or get my fence ready to lay out wherever I want. So I'm about to lay out 3 100-foot rolls of fence, so I'm going to show you how to do that real quick, and then I'll show you how to connect them and set them up. So now that we've got those fence rolls laid out, we are going to start actually putting the spikes into the ground. Now, I'm connecting 2 pieces of fence right here, and this is where the black ropes come in handy because that's the way you're actually going to tie the 2 posts together. Now, when you're connecting multiple pieces of fence together, you've got these little clips here, and you're just going to connect the ends of those, and that's going to allow the electricity to flow through all sets of fence. Now, one thing to be aware of when you are actually putting these posts into the ground is you don't want your fence to be all saggy. So if your fence looks like that, you don't have it tight enough. So I like to pull it tight, and I'll press my foot at the bottom of that spike, and then I'll press it into the ground, and that ensures that my fencing is not drooping down. All right, so we got 300 foot of fencing set up. I'm gonna move these sheep right quick, and then I'm gonna show you how to electrify the fence. Okay, so now let's talk about getting that fence energized. Now we're using the INTELLISHOCK 100 for this. This will charge anywhere from 3 to 5 rolls of netting. Again, make sure you don't skimp on this. I would suggest getting a powerful energizer, either the INTELLISHOCK 60, 80, or 100. I wouldn't skimp and get the 30. That one will only power about 1 to 2 rolls of fencing. It has these 2 spikes on the bottom, so we're going to spike this energizer down in the ground here. And you're going to want to face this solar panel to the south or towards the sun, depending upon where you're located in the world, because that's obviously how this fence energizer is charging. Now what we're going to do is we're going to hammer in our ground rods. This is an incredibly crucial part to any type of electric fencing setup. The way you calculate how much ground rod you need is per joule of fence energizer, which this is a little under 1 joule. You need 3 foot of ground rod in the ground. I like to have more ground rod than not enough, and so we're actually going to be hammering in both of these ground rods, and so we'll probably end up having 4 or 5 feet of ground rod in the ground. So now that we've got that ground rod in the ground, we are going to connect the black clip from our energizer, this is our ground, to that ground rod. Now that we got that on there, I'm going to hammer in my other ground rod, and then we'll connect them with the ground rod connectors. Okay, so we got both ground rods in the ground. As you can see, this one here is a lot further out of the ground. We've got really rocky soil up here at the top of the hill, so I wasn't able to get that one any further than about 1 foot. Now I got this one about all the way into the ground, so that's going to give us about 4 foot of ground rod, which should be plenty. Now this is a connector for both ground rods. Again, I like more ground rod than not enough, and a lot of reason I like it that way too is because when it's really dry out, that soil is dry, and that's the way the current operates. When an animal comes up to this fence and gets shocked, that electrical current is going to travel through the animal into the soil and back up through these ground rods. And so again, if it's really dry out, you want more ground rods than not enough, because that's the way the electrical current travels. So now that we got the ground rods in, we're going to use our positive clip, the red one, and you're going to connect to where you've got 2 of your fences connected together. You're going to clip it right there on that clip. Now if you're installing your energizer and you're not near where you have 2 sections clipped together, you can just clip it on this strand right there. So now that we've got the energizer fully hooked up, we got the ground rods in the ground, all of our clips are connected in the right spot, we're going to turn on the energizer. And the way that you're going to do that is by pressing this button back here. And you can see there it's blinking green. It'll give you a kind of a code of showing you if your battery's getting low or not. If that starts blinking green and red, then that means your battery is starting to get low. If it's blinking completely red, that means you need to charge that thing or get a new energizer out here and take this one to be charged. So now that we've got everything hooked up, it's time to test our fence. This is where you're going to use this digital tester. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this end of the digital tester, we're going to stick it into the ground, and we're going to take the tip of our tester, and we're going to come up here and test what kind of output we've got coming from the fence. I'm showing 5.9, 6.1, 5.8, 6.5, and then I just showed you 7.3. So this is giving me anywhere from 5,500 to 7,500 volts. So if it says 5.5, you're going to multiply that by 1,000. So that would be 5,500. What you don't want is you don't want anything under 5,000. You want this fence to be as hot as possible. Sometimes you may, if you've got really tall grass where this fencing is set up and it's touching those bottom electric strands, then that's grounding out your fence. And so your output and your shock of the fence isn't going to be as strong. So with that being said, you may have to come through and string trim if you've got, really tall grass. But anything 5,000 and up is a great charge, because what's going to happen is a coyote or any other predator, they're going to come up to this fence, they're going to touch it with their nose, they're going to get shocked, and they're not going to come back. It is a pain deterrent. This isn't a physical barrier. Obviously an animal could get through this fence if they wanted to, but pain is a fantastic deterrent. And so it's going to keep predators out, it's going to keep your animals in. So now let's talk about how to properly roll up and store your fence. If you've got multiple rolls of fencing, for example with our sheep, we have 6 rolls so that we can create paddocks with 3 of the rolls, and then we can set up a new paddock with 3 rolls and then move the sheep through very easily, just like I did a minute ago. So if you've got multiple rolls that you're going to be storing at times, I'm going to show you how to properly roll and store them up so it doesn't become a big tangled mess. So now that we got that fencing all on the ground, we're going to come down to the very end and we're going to grab our first section of fence, just like this. Then I'm going to grab section number 2, and we're going to continue walking on down until we've collected the entire section of fence. Okay, so now that we've got that section of fence picked up, we're gonna lay it just like this. So I just come down here at the end and I'm gonna roll it up just like you would anything else. And then we're gonna grab our black ties down here at the end, and we're just going to make a knot. And that way we've got this ready to store. Now, if you like that video and you want a complete guide on how to raise laying hens on your homestead, watch this video now.